I'm ChosenArchitect, and this is All the Mods 9, and today we dive even deeper into applied energistics, talking about tunnels and also getting ourselves some LV started with Gregtech. Oh boy, the assemblers. Yes, we get it all done with fluid crafting. Hopefully you guys are ready. So last episode in All the Mods 9, oh boy did we get Gregification started. As you can hear and see, yes, the madness has begun. Also, the machine expansion has begun. And I've also found a way to, well, send items more effectively to my steam boiler. What I'm doing is simply using one channel and exporting coal into a barrel. And then I just realized that the universal cables, well, I can have multiple inputs feeding to these machines. So this can feed fluid and also the coal into the same side, which makes this a lot more compact. And you can see I can now technically scale this up just like you see here. And this gives me a little bit more room for some more machines that are based on this tier, which we're probably going to need because right now it's pretty slow. And the only way to scale it up is by, well, just adding more machines. But today I want to get into LV power. That's right, low voltage power is what I'm going to be jumping into today and experimenting with a little bit of those things. Now, much like I expected getting into Gregtech, and the thing that I have heard most about it is the crafting, and there's a lot of things that need to be crafted. Now, our applied energistics system has really made this a lot easier, but I still have to go in and make sure we have everything available to us in order to craft most things. And at this point, we are looking pretty good. I've barely touched any items here, and these are the majority of the items that we have needed outside of Gregtech to start producing all of the stuff we needed. But today, I think that's going to change a little bit because, well, we're going to get into some new alloys and all kinds of other stuff according to this quest here. So it takes us back right here to wrought iron and explains to us that we're going to need some wrought iron. And we do. We need quite a bit of wrought iron because it is actually used as the fundamental part of these LV machine hulls. It says you just need a little bit of imagination, which I absolutely love because I love SpongeBob, and I really hope that's a SpongeBob reference. But this LV machine hull requires these wrought iron plates. Wrought iron plates can be made with the hammer, and of course, there is a nicer recipe. I still don't think the forge hammer is 100% worth it, but with 3 of them, we'll make 2 plates. Whereas you're kind of saving 1 iron per 2 operations, which could save you a little bit, but we can produce this pretty much infinitely. So I'm not super worried about having a forge for that. But maybe for some other things, as I'm still looking at all of these ingredients, this is going to lead us into a major milestone though, which is I think the electric blast furnace, or as I've heard it called, the EBF. This thing right here seems pretty cool, but it requires some maintenance and is probably going to be one of our first multi-blocks that we actually make in this mod. So just taking a look at something that we're about to get into, the basic centrifuge here, right? If we take a look at the recipes, this is where things get crazy, right? We just spent last episode working towards the basic electronic circuits. We have those, we can actually craft them, and we should be fine there, making them as needed. We have quite a few already batch crafted, which is really nice. But we have these tin cables, for example, that we need to make. Tin cables require rubber sheets. So right now we're producing rubber sheets at an okay pace. Later on, there's going to be apparently a better way to make rubber sheets. But for right now, this is what we have. We're producing it at an okay rate. And then tin wires are super easy. We've got to get tin from a refined storage over here to make these, but that's pretty straightforward. And we have tons of tin. Now the electric motors is another thing. Thankfully, we can actually make these magnetic iron rods with redstone, and we don't have to send them through a magnetizer. So this is kind of nice, but these are something we're also going to have to keep in mind. These things with the little magnet on them require it to be magnetized. And so we can do this with redstone, which is interesting. But we also have these tin cables. Like I said, these have to be covered. Then we have iron rods, all these things we have. This is the easy part. We take a look at the multi-block or even the assembler, for example. This is where things get a little bit more complicated, and that is in the assembler. We're going to be dealing with fluids. We're going to be dealing with all kinds of stuff this chapter, it looks like. So LV robot arms, these just require a lot more just crafting of components. Tons of different things being crafted, and it's just a rabbit hole after a rabbit hole. Like I said, once we have it done once, then we should be fine. And we should be able to craft these. But could you imagine just crafting these all by hand? I I can't even fathom somebody doing this all by hand. Now, ultimately, and I don't know if it's going to be today, I would love to be able to make this. This does require a lot of stuff, including the liquid handling, which I figured out how I'm going to do. We are actually going to use Applied Energistics to handle our fluids as well. Right now, the way we are currently doing it, we have a controller right here, and I think we can handle these fluids by just simply maybe down here, adding some fluid containers that will hold all of our different types of fluids, and we can connect that up to the storage drawer as well. And I believe this can read both items and fluids. It says right here, items and fluids. So just having this attached to here is already solving that one problem. And yeah, that one problem was where we were going to store our fluids and how we're going to handle them. That's where the functional storage mod is going to have our back, is handling those fluids for us. But there is something that we need to sort of nip in the bud right away, and that is how we're going to handle channels from Applied Energistics from this point moving forward. Because this is going to get kind of complicated as we start to make more machines, more things moving around. We're going to run into channel problems. And the best way to handle those, while it does seem complicated, I promise you it's not. And that is ME tunnels. Yes, these things right here, peer-to-peer tunnels, as you've probably heard them called, or peer-to-peer, and then it also probably gets mixed in with subnets and all kinds of other stuff. I'm going to try my best to show you one of the simplest ways to set these up to extend your channels. And we are going to do that with a system that we already have currently set up. So taking a step down under here, we can see we're using 13 channels of our 32 that are running along this beam, which heads all the way over here into our steam room. Now, what I want to do is I actually want to separate this. And I want the 32 channels to start down here. And that may seem like a kind of crazy thing to do, is to have our 32 here. But I want to take a piece of our controller that is all the way on over here. I want to take a piece of this controller, and I basically want to send it virtually over here. And this is where we get into those tunnels that I was talking about. And the best way to show you them is by simply holding the W to show you a guide. And this is probably the best representation of how it works. And even this looks kind of confusing, but essentially what this is, you can see this point right here. This is one of the tunnels. And then we have this strand that runs through them, which is the cable. The cable is basically this window, and these will accept the channels from this side connected. And then it just immediately outputs them using the cabling in between to output through the other side of the peer-to-peer. So your peers are going to consist of two different things. So we have two peer tunnels, and then we're going to link them with a memory card. And when we do this, for example, right down here, I'm just going to simply access this one side of this controller. And to do that, I'm going to link here, and then I'm just going to use a regular cable, ME cable, to link into this. Now, this is going to cost one channel off of the main network. So this should cost one channel, as you see right here. And it's also going to cost one channel on the other side of the connected network. But it's going to be worth it because we are accessing 32 channels from this side. Now, I don't have these linked together yet. Let's go ahead and get it set up on the other side. So the place that we want to use. We just have to make sure we have cabling that is linking and bridging that network. So, for example, right here. So what I should be able to do is I should be able to simply hook this in right here. And you see that now we have we have too many channels. There's no channels going into here. But now we have this tunnel, and I need to link that to this. So I'm hooking in a regular cable. This is going to also take another channel. You see one channel. Now to link these up, we just simply click this with a memory card. So we just hold down Control and click it. And this is now linked to that frequency that was just placed there. And then we just head back over to the other one. And the crazy part is when we link these together, it is going to immediately give that new set of cables access by clicking on this, just right clicking. That is going to put this here. And now this is linked to the other one. It's pretty ridiculous. Now I do notice that right here, it does say outputting, and you can actually change this by making the output side, which this technically would be the input side. And we can go ahead and unlink this, and then we can just link again. And if we get that frequency, this will then become the input and the other one will become the output. I don't know if it really matters too much. I would have to do some testing to see if that matters. I did notice that it did say outputting. So as you can see, this is now the output side. And what we should notice is we now have 32 channels over here. And that is accessing that one specific side of that that controller. So this is essentially like this cable is basically connected directly to that controller block. And that's how we're going to do it. And notice now, if we go back, we'll notice that we're only using 2 channels on this one long cable that's under here. We should now only be using the 2 channels. And we can see that when we look at this setup here. And those 2 channels are just coming from those peer-to-peers. Now, I tried to explain this as best I can, but peer-to-peers are basically like portals that use the applied energistic cables to transfer something back and forth, because you can also send redstone and all kinds of other stuff through these. So here on the other side that I'm going to be working with today, I'm going to set this one up in the exact same way. And I'm going to be hooking in the smart cables. Keep in mind, you don't want to hook in the dense cables directly to this because you can't connect anything directly into the dense cables. You have to run them through the regular ME cables first. And so just like the other side, I'm going to access another part of this controller and bam, there we go. And then I just need to control click to link the device and then just right click on the new set, which is going to be over here, which is where I plan on working with the low voltage cabling, which is going to be down here. So as soon as I right click, this should now say 32 channels, in which it does. Look at that. Perfect. Now back into the production of our materials. Wrought iron is something that I was a little bit confused with when I started messing around with this stuff. And the wrought iron here, you have to go all the way to nugget form, which has kind of taught me now that if I'm looking for how to make something without using the quest book, to probably check every possible option, because this might be a way. For example, iron nuggets into this. And I'm sure there's another chemical process, and I don't know if this is a regular standard recipe for this, but I can go ahead and just add it into this. And now we have the ability to produce this and produce a lot. And you know what? Just to actually keep this pretty quick on crafting, I'm actually going to clear this out, and I'm going to set this process to be a little bit more. If you middle mouse click within refined storage, it'll actually allow you to change the amounts. And so if I do 9 at a time, that's 1 ingot worth every process operation, which could save a little bit of time, probably not a whole lot, but it will make this a little bit faster. I think I'm also going to use refined storage for ultimately crafting up this iron. That way we can just send the raw iron directly over and then down process if we ever need nuggets. Now, some other materials that I'm going to need outside of getting all of these things crafted up is a funny word enough, cupronickel. This is kind of cool. And by the way, if I pronounce any of these things wrong, please forgive me. I have no idea sometimes how to pronounce some things. But cupronickel, I think I'm going to go with that. That's what it sounds cool. Cupronickel. There's probably so many different ways that you could go about pronouncing this, and I'm sure everybody has their own way and is going to tell me the way to say it. But anyways, we need to make this. So we do need another alloyer that is going to be from Gregtech here. So I'm just going to be applying it like this, and it's just nickel and copper. So we can just do the whole round robin with an exporter, and that should be able to allow us to export both of these items into the alloyer. Now for this, I do need to run a new line as I am at 8 channels on this branch. So I'm running a new branch, and this is where cable anchors come into play. So I can use a cable anchor here to separate these 2 cables. That way they do not connect and do not connect their channels, because that would cause a little bit of a conflict. So you can see right here, and if you want to make it look even more fancy, you can add one onto this side like that, and then they look like they're connecting if looks were something you're after. And my goodness, it's really hard to get between these blocks. But yes, I do need to bring this up and over here, because I am going to need an input, and I'm also going to need an output. So I am going to bring this along the back, and we are going to be inputting and also retrieving back from this one block. Now, once we're fully out of the Steam age, things are going to get a little bit easier to configure, as we will have just one side to kind of work with. At least so I hope. So here we go. Copper and nickel. And I've gone ahead and made sure that this is set to export using round robin mode, which is kind of a nice feature. And this is now going to start processing them, and yeah, we have this now running. So now after getting that process up and running, it does look like the quest line is sort of feeding us into producing glue, which will eventually end up in this good electronic circuit part right here, which is pretty nice. It says, yeah, you've been remembering to batch craft things, right? I'll give you a pass this time and assume you have. I love this. I mean, it would be honestly nice to have this, and we did batch craft these. And so this will be something that we'll probably batch craft as well. We'll probably do 32 of them as they start to go. Later on, things will get to be crafted on request, or not on request. We'll have them pre-set up, and we'll use requesters from Applied Energistics to keep these things currently in stock. And that'll be something that'll be really nice to always have like 32 of them in stock, for example, and so on and so forth. And when it runs low, that's when it will start to do the crafts. That way we don't have to handle all of this stuff in the back end. But basic centrifuge here. You spin me right round. I love these descriptions. Like they did a pretty good job putting these quests together. And yeah, this right here, basic centrifuge. I have everything to be able to craft this, by the way. I done all of the crafting. So if I go to craft a centrifuge, it's a lot of stuff. So there we go. And then I hit start, and that should craft up our first centrifuge. Now, there's some other things that we need, and that's how we're going to do power. So the way I'm going to do power, because I have creative energy, is to use energy converters. Now, these are kind of expensive, but if we just go with the basic tier, we should be fine. This basic one right here, for example, is 1 amp, and this is going to give me a good time to kind of play around with how amperage works, how many machines I can have, and so on and so forth. And we change the conversion by default. I think it's to convert EU to FE, as it says right here. But if we use a soft mallet, that wooden mallet, we can convert it into what we need. And so if I go ahead and go to craft one of these, like a converter, we should have everything needed for this. There we go. And we should now be able to power this. And let's grab some wire, like tin wire, like some covered, I think covered tin wire would be great. Now we don't want to use the redstone alloy. This only holds a voltage of 8. And I believe that the voltage, the cable will fizzle out. But this right here, we're going to have 32 EU to play with and 1 amp. It's going to be difficult for me to kind of wrap my head around all of this and really get a full understanding of how this all works. But I want my power to be right here and be in the back. And we'll figure out the way that this sort of goes. And we can rotate this machine by holding down control, I believe. We can change the sides. And you can see I now have the red facing here. And if we pull out a mallet, I should be able to change the direction of this. Oop, let's not craft a new mallet. We already have a mallet. There we go. A wooden staff. I guess I do need to craft a new one. There we go. All right. So now that I have this, I can click this to change it. And so now this should be taking an FE and converting it into EU. So let's do that. Let's do some FE, and we can do a point. I mean, a point would work. Honestly, we might be better off doing a gate just because gates are a lot cleaner looking. At least I think they're cleaner looking. And I can place a gate on here, and you see now there is 512 EU stored in here because it has now converted. And the way we're going to send that, that 1 amp that this little thing is making, is we're going to send that through this cable. This holds 1 amp. And then if we were to make this a thick boy cable, that's what I'm going to call it, the tier 2 cable, which is a little bit stiffer, right? It does require, I'm trying to find it in here. There's just so many recipes, right? So tin cable. If I just search it, I might be able to find it. There it is. So you see these kind of go up in tiers. And so we have this tier cable, and then we have this one. This one can apparently, that's a platinum cable. We just need regular tin. These will continue to go up. And then we now have tier 2. This can hold 2 amps. Go up, that holds 4 amps, and so on and so forth, 8 amps. And there is a 16 amp. And there's also a 16 amp converter, which would probably be one of the better ones to make later on, once we have more resources. And definitely more rubber. Now, like I said, I'm still trying to wrap my head around how the amperage works. Now, this does show here. It says amps are like packets of power. And yes, they come in different voltage tiers, LV, MV, HV. Machines which receive extra amps will not explode. That's good. That's good. Cables and wires will burn out if giving more amps than they are rated for. So I've just got to kind of, I guess, figure out how many machines and stuff and like what the machines use, which I think it tells you here. For example, this uses 32 EU, and I'm assuming runs off of 1 amp because of its abilities, I guess. And I guess we could possibly connect this right to here, and that will allow this to work, or we could use our cable. It is better to use covered cables because you are going to lose EU. Look at this. It says loss meter. So we're going to use we're going to lose 1 volt per, or 1 EU, I guess, per distance traveled. Oof, that is not good. So for right now, this might be the way to go. Just simply having these directly connected, at least these 1 amperes connected directly to the machine. Later on, we'll probably use cables. Yeah, because whenever we get those 16 amps, I believe it's like per machine, right? So the more amps you have, the more machines you can hook. So if you have 16 amps, you should be able to hook up 16 machines. If you have 1 amp, 1 machine, and 2 amps, 2 machines, you know, so on and so forth, I believe. That's my understanding. 100%. Let me know if I'm wrong in the comments, and I'm going to try my best to decipher all of you guys' comments. I promise. Now, inside of this machine, we now have some new things to play with. We have these different icons that are on the slots. We have like these outputs here. This is fluid. This is actual items. We do have some information up here, but we also have this like configuration tab that doesn't really say anything until we open it up. And then we get something that's very reminiscent from Ender.io. This looks very similar to Ender.io. And when we click on here, it changes to green. So my understanding is that orange is output, and there is no input, right? Because input doesn't have an auto input mode, at least not in these machines. Then there's fluid. So blue is going to be fluid input or fluid output, right? And I still don't know how to clear these, like, unless I'm missing a button. The auto mode, I still don't know unless that auto outputs is what that's trying to say. And you see right here, you can click and have different sides do different things. But my assumption is that you can have, for example, on the bottom here, we can have this both set to auto output on fluid and items. And then if we click this, we should be able to allow item input from the output side. And so this is where I'm hoping that we can use an item interface for interacting with this. And then I'm still not sure what this little chip over here is made to do. Maybe it does allow for auto input, but I just haven't figured that out yet. In the eyes of Greg, I am still a noob. So now I guess it's the moment of truth to technically find out if this is the case. So I'm going to put an item interface on the bottom here, and this should auto send the items back into our applied energistics system. And it should be items and fluids. This should be able to handle both of those things. And I'm hoping so that way we can handle this all in one block space. So all we have to do is get this hooked in, and then I'm going to send to this machine some resin. Yes, some resin right here. So I just put that there, and that should send here, but I still don't think that there's an auto input, so it doesn't know to take from this, and this apparently doesn't automatically extract the items. Oh, that is so painful. I wonder if there's a way that I could do that. So after a few more questions, you can actually auto import, and it's very convoluted, and I did not know this because how am I supposed to? The quest, I don't think, mention it, and if it does, it is not in its own chapter, that's for sure. But I think this is probably a very important thing to know, is how to automatically import. So I'm going to select the bottom here and make sure that both of these are allowed. And this little slot right here, I found out what it's for. It's for these two things. The things that I thought were just crafting components are actually useful. So you have the LV conveyor module, and then we have the LV robot arm. Now the robot arm is for attaching regular inventories. Like for example, for me to use the interface, I need an LV robot arm. But the LV conveyor module, this allows me to export to a machine, and this machine to auto import from another sort of centrifuge, for example, would need a conveyor belt to receive instead of a arm. The arm is to like grab items out of inventories, for example, like this interface. So if I now put the sticky resin in here and I go into the config, and we have these both set to auto output for both fluids and items, we can set the input by putting the arm in here, the robot arm, and then I click the settings button, and I can set this to import mode. And now it's going to auto import, and I think that's pretty darn cool. And it looks like it even has a filter slot. I don't know how the filters are made, but it does have that over here, it looks like. Or yeah, cover and its filter. So there's all kinds of interesting different things that you can use here. And so now this is pulling in the resin, you can see right there, and it's processing it, and it's automatically sending the fluid out, and it's also sending our items out, and the items are automatically getting stored. So with that knowledge, we now need to store this fluid somewhere, or this glue. And to do that, I am going to now get into that functional storage. So now hooking up the fluids, it's just as simple as placing in the fluid drawers. I went ahead and got them all placed in, and I didn't have to really change anything. It just automatically ended up filling up the first drawer that I linked and placed. And now I have all of them nice and locked. And yes, you can go ahead and actually lock all of these. So that's probably something worth doing. Uh-oh, I did make a mistake, I think. Oh, I had unlocked all of my drawers. That's not good. So I do have a solution to this huge mistake that I just made. As you can see that I unlocked all the drawers, and so my mega exporter automatically fed all of those items and propagated all of these storages. The way that I'm going to do this is I'm going to turn this off by only working with a redstone signal, and then I'm going to get a cable, and I should be able to tap into this real quick. And I'm going to break the drawers that I've already had configured and set up appropriately. And these are going to keep all of their items maintained and stored. So these are the correct ones right here. This does have a little bit of extra that doesn't need to be in there. But all of these other drawers, this is how I'm going to fix this weird mistake that you might also do as well. It is a very easy mistake to do. And I'm going to put an importer on here, making sure this is only work with redstone signal. And then I'm just going to pull all of these items back out of these drawers and then unlock them. So if I go ahead now and I unlock all of these, that should hopefully fix all this problem and drain all of these items from all of this. So let's see if this works. So I'm hooking this in, and now all of these should find their way out. If I get some speed upgrades, that should pull these items out of here very, very quickly. Yes. Okay. Problem solved. Phew. Crisis averted. So after all of that craziness, this is now processing, and we should have all items being handled. We can see that this is sending or providing the ability for it to pull the sticky resin in, and it's just working. This should also give us more of that pulp, which we need in order to produce more rubber. Now we get to actually incorporate fluids, right? So we get to take some of that glue that we have and we get to turn it into the phenolic circuit board. I'm definitely saying that wrong, but we get to take that glue and use it. So this has a fluid input, so we can actually send fluids. And then we have our sawdust, and then it has a program circuit that says not consumed in this operation, which is kind of nice to know, because I was actually wondering that when I originally seen this. So this is going to cost 30 EU on its own, just with the usage. It's going to take 7.5 seconds to process. It's quite a while. It's going to use some of that dust. So I did convert my dust over to just importing into our storage. So I now have an importing the sawdust. And then over here, I have my sawdust being sent here, the pulp. But we also need to use that for this setup as well. So that should be able to handle both of those. And I guess it's now time to craft the assembler, the basic assembler. Oh boy. Yeah, and we're definitely out of rubber sheets. Oh boy. So I thought I was out of rubber, so I had upgraded my rubber. Probably not a bad thing that I did this anyways, so that we're producing those sheets a bit faster. But turns out I just crafted the wrong thing without really noticing it when I set up the auto crafting recipe. Turns out there are two different recipes that I can use for crafting, for example, the conveyor belts. And that's what got me. It's the conveyor pattern that's right here. So if I go ahead and put the conveyor pattern, I believe, back in here, it will allow me to remake this. So I can go ahead and do the rubber sheets, not the Styrian sheets. I'm not even going to attempt that. And there we go. So now we have the correct sheets that are now applied, and that will allow us to make that assembler. And we're very close to now having this all set up. I just gotta, all these little micro things is just kind of reminding me each time. I just gotta make sure to check every time I make a pattern so that I make the correct pattern. But we should now be able to make the assembler, and there we go. So it's crafting all the things together. Shouldn't take all that long to do. We can check all of our processes happening here in like super speed, which is amazing to be able to see this. I couldn't imagine doing this any other way, but there we go. Our assembler is ready. And now what we have the ability to do is to set this up. I am going to craft another energy converter for right now. Eventually we'll be able to have more of these going. But for right now, we're going to use this. and we get to kind of use a different sort of import export system. So for this machine, yeah, the creative methods, I mean, there may be creative. I don't know if it's like, I don't know what to call it. Is it super creative? I have no idea. But what I want to do is I'm going to import, or I'm sorry, I'm going to export out of my AE system an item and a fluid. And that should allow us, but we're going to have to insert, because unfortunately, even though we can auto input just like this, fluids, apparently to be able to input fluids, the upgrade that you would put here is actually a pump, which has the same tooltip as this does. And that would allow you to auto pull fluids from tanks and stuff like that. Unfortunately, you can't have both of them in the same slot. There's not like a dual slot. So I can't auto pull fluids and items from, for example, an IMI interface, which would be really nice if we could. So instead, I am going to use an exporter, and thankfully the exporter will automatically send the things we need into here. Now I'm hoping that I don't have to keep a very specific amount of items inside these two slots like the recipe shows. That could change how this actually works. And I don't know if there's a way to define the specific recipe. I think there was something mentioned about like a recipe program card, but that's something that I'm going to have to look into a bit more. Now, to be able to make this program card, apparently I'm supposed to be able to just craft it. Craft this program circuit. It says configuration 1, and I've got to figure that out. I guess configuration, and then we select 1. Oh, that's interesting. Okay, so then the configuration 1 is set, and we put that in here, and then we put the sawdust on into this. Okay, so we have that going, and then the importer on the other side. Okay, I'm getting somewhere. And then in here, we should be able to say send glue. And if I go ahead and hotkey glue over here, we can put that there. And then this also needs pulp. So we just need wood pulp. And so if I send wood pulp and then I drag glue over here, that should then hopefully send wood and hopefully send fluid into this as well. Or am I going to specifically need, okay, I might need to set this to round robin. Is it going to also send the fluid in here? Oh, yes, it does. So the round robin mode is going to be the necessary evil in this setup. Okay, and then we just need to give this power from a converter. Okay, perfect. Converter down, and it's rotated the wrong way. So let me actually rotate this the correct way. Let's place it from back here. Maybe that will work. All right, I placed it upside down. That is definitely not the way that I wanted. Let's just rotate it with a wrench. Maybe if I hold down control as well. Nope, it doesn't invert that way. But we do want to convert this. So there we go. We got it converted. And then a wrench. And with our wrench, we now should be able to rotate this face, I think. Or maybe it's a hammer? No, it's definitely the wrench, I think. I can't be flying to do this. I have to be on the ground. Oh, that's interesting. Okay, and then we'll convert that. Perfect. And then I'll just use another gate. Nice. Okay, so with that, that should now be receiving the power. And there it goes. It's doing the operation, and it filling with wood pulp doesn't seem to be causing any problems. Oh, that is good to know. And there we go. And so this should automatically import this, or is there going to need to be a configuration? Do I have to set the output? It looks like I do. So I'm going to have to tell this, hey, this is the output. And I might also need to set this to auto output. So let's set this to auto. And will that automatically output, or am I going to need another interface? It doesn't seem like it's outputting like I would hope into an import bus. Uh-oh. Maybe I'm also going to need to make sure this is enabled for this side. And is that going to work? It doesn't seem like it is. So I got to figure out how to get those boards into our applied energistics system. Okay, interesting. So an IMI interface it is. It doesn't appear like it automatically allows me to pull from the sides, at least. It might have allowed me to pull from the bottom, but it does look like having some sort of inventory to the side seems to work better. And yeah, an IMI interface, it automatically exported, much like I have it set to auto export. It sent that over here. That's interesting. Okay, and so this is now producing those components. And we have now introduced sending fluids using a programmed circuit and also exporting items all into the same machine and then figuring out a way to automatically pull those items out. That's pretty cool. And I love that animation. Look at that. That's so neat. I am honestly blown away by how good these machines actually look. Now, I know I didn't get super far today inside of the LV chapter, but that's completely understandable. At least I think it's understandable. But we did get our assembler up and running, and I learned a ton of new mechanics for this mod. Also, I gotta love it when it becomes dark. It is so dramatic every time the light changes. But yes, I think that I have learned a ton of new things that I'm gonna be able to use when I start building out future machines. So all of these mechanics, keep in mind, are new to me, and I am slowly but surely getting the hang of things. Also, like I have always said, if there's something that you would love to tell me and to give me nice little tips, I would really, really appreciate that. And of course, you can tell me those in the comments down below. Also, be sure to give this video a huge thumbs up, and if you haven't subscribed already, be sure to do that. And well, it's now time to thank the amazing supporter of today's episode. And that is going to be a huge thanks that is going out to Sanctified. Thank you so much, by the way, for your amazing support in becoming a Discord premium member and supporting me in one of the best ways possible. I thank you guys so very much for watching. Thank you for all of your tremendous support, and thank you for getting us so close to the 600,000 subscriber mark here on YouTube. What an insane thing to achieve. That's so many people. Like, just think about it. It's a lot. It's a lot of people. And guys, if you did enjoy, I'll see you in the next one. And as always, thanks for watching. Bye.